In this week's brand new episode of Hill Climb Monsters in Project Cars 2, we're doing the Rari Workout as the recently released Ferrari FXX K takes on our Azure Coast Hill Climb course. But with nearly 1100 brake horsepower at our disposal, can this Maranello Monster claim top spot? Let's go find out. What's going on, guys? My name is Matteo and welcome back to Project Cars 2 and a brand new episode of Hill Climb Monsters. And this week's challenger, as you can see on screen, is the recently released Ferrari FXX K. So as a lot of you will know, this came as part of the Ferrari Essentials DLC pack, which was released last week. And the reason I decided to go for this car for this time around was obviously, one, it's just been released, so I was pretty excited. This was one of the cars I was really looking forward to getting my hands on when this DLC was announced. And also, the other reason is it stacks up very, very well against the car we drove in the last episode, the McLaren P1 GTR. So I was very, very keen to see how these two stack up against each other and which one would come out on top on our Azure Coast Hill Climb course. So that's the reason I've opted to go for the FXXK this time out. But yeah, let's jump straight into it, and we'll start off by taking a look at some of the stats now. And as you would imagine, quite impressive. So this was produced in 2015, just like the McLaren P1 GTR. It is a rear-wheel drive. It falls into the track day A category. It has a 7-speed sequential gearbox bolted to a what I believe is a 6.3 litre V12 engine. That's producing nearly 1100 brake horsepower. All of that's good enough to push this thing to nearly 220 miles an hour, and from 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. So very, very impressive on the stats there. Now that 1100 or so brake horsepower, it doesn't all come from the combustion engine. This thing does actually have a battery assisted engine, like a KERS sort of system, and that's producing nearly 200 brake horsepower. So the other 850 or so, or whatever, however it all shakes out, is coming from the combustion engine. So again, very, very comparable to the McLaren. The McLaren does have that exact same sort of layout. The FXX K is based on the LaFerrari platform, so this is sort of the track geared version of the Ferrari LaFerrari, basically. So like the LaFerrari and like the P1, you know, very much like a sort of hybrid hypercar sort of thing. So that's why it's got the KERS system. In terms of weight, it comes in at nearly 3,300 pounds, so it's quite heavy, a bit heavier than I thought it would be when I got into this car initially. It does feature ABS traction control and stability control, so like the P1 GTR last week. Control difficulty 1, cornering speed 2, and as I said, it's quite impressive across the board. This came as part of the that whole raft of hypercars. You know, the Porsche had one, the 91, was it the 918? I can't quite remember what it was. You know, we got the P1 and we got the FXX K. So yeah, very, very impressive on terms of stats. In terms of setup and practice, it wasn't too bad. I mean, there was 3 major problems I was running into. The first one being understeer, the second one being the braking, and the third one, which sort of feeds into where the first problem was coming in, was lack of downforce. Now, the problem with the lack of downforce is this doesn't feature any adjustable wings, either the front or rear, so it was going to be very, very difficult to find any sort of improvements. You might be able to get some small improvements by messing around with the ride heights and the suspension and so on, but I'm talking very, very small incremental improvements with it, and I did what I could on that front. In terms of the braking, overall it was just kind of numb. I don't know whether that comes down to the fact that it does have an air brake. The rear ring does flip up and to assist braking, but yeah, kind of numb. Not a great feel for them, and sometimes it just wouldn't stop at all for some reason. So fiddling around with the pressure, the brake pressures and the brake biases for one, was a little bit tricky, but I think we got it to to be as good as it was going to be, basically. But the big issue was understeer, and I did what I could with it. Fiddling around with tyre pressures, then the suspension, the dampers, the differential as well, where it can help in that regard. Mostly it was sort of corner exit oversteer or power on oversteer. Sometimes it would maybe get a little bit numb and a little bit light and just completely like it was like the steering wheel wasn't attached to the front axles basically through mid corner. So it was a bit of a tricky car. I did what I could with it, like I said, but it got to a point where I'd reached the plateau, and any other changes I made were just going to bring the performance and the the overall time, I think, on the runs down. So I got to my plateau and I just left it as it is and just decided to try and drive around the issues itself. As you would imagine with a car with understeer, there were a few accidents here and there. This first one you see, yeah, I think I just maybe anticipating understeer, I maybe turned it a little bit too early, clipped that inside reservation, it just spat me out into the opposite side of the road and into that fence. So yeah, that was a bit of a silly one. And again, this one down into the magic roundabout, again just anticipating understeer. Maybe turned it a little bit too early, got way too much of the magic roundabout, and it just, well, I nearly rolled it. I nearly rolled it as we came over there, and it just eventually, it just sent the steering all out of kilter and so on, so we had to kind of abandon the run and bring it to a standstill. So yeah, so it was a tricky car to set up, a tricky car to drive as well, but let's go and find out how this thing stacks up against the McLaren and how it gets on its run. We'll do that in a second though. Let's just remind ourselves what's going on with the Hill Climb Monsters leaderboard. And as we remember, the Toyota TS050 Hybrid is very firmly at the top of our leaderboard, and I don't think it's going to come anywhere close to that. But as we've been saying throughout this episode, it really realistically should be aiming to get close to, or maybe even beating, the McLaren P1 GTR, which set a 621.137 in the previous episode, which if you haven't seen, you can go click on the card in the top right hand corner. You can go have a look at that episode now, because that was a very good episode, a very fun one. So yeah, I don't think there's anything else it really should be aiming for. It definitely should be beating the Mitsubishi Evo SVA, which also falls into the same track day A category. But I think realistically, considering they were both produced in 2015, they're both more track-centered versions of the McLaren and Ferrari's hypercars. I think it definitely should be aiming for the P1 GTR or very, very close to that. But yeah, so let's get this party started. So we're going to head down to the track now, and we're going to find out how the Ferrari FXX K got on its best run. Okay then guys, here we go. Ferrari FXX K on our Azure Coast Hill Climb course, and as we come down to the first corner booty curve, and this first few corners, you're going to see the problems that I was encountering with this being quite understeer. I'm having to saw up the wheel at times, especially through here. You see it's just starting to drift to the outside there, and I mean under braking down into here, this was the challenge. You're going to see it just here. It's just going to skate off. You see it just as soon as you get on the power, it just starts understeering away from you. Very, very good through trash can corner, but I did get on the brakes a lot earlier through that for this particular run, just to get the nose in a little bit easier. But I mean, coming down to the magic roundabout just takes it in its stride, over 125 miles an hour. It just takes it in stride and keeps on going. So very, very good over the bumps there. But as we get it down to third gear, coming into stickman squats now, maybe just clip one of those bollards on the right hand side there. But we keep on going and get ourselves onto the happy highway, where we can really open this thing up. As we know, got a top speed of nearly 220 miles an hour, and we're not going to get nearly to 220 miles an hour, but we're going to be going very, very quickly as we crest the hill here. It's going to be nearly 190. As we come back down though, we're going to get again all the way up to just 190 miles an hour, as we have to bring it down to get it through traffic cone corner there. And that was a bit of a challenging corner back there, because obviously it's got the initial turn in. That's the problem. It's got the initial turn. It feels very good. And when you got that initial turn, you think, okay, it's going to be good. But then as soon as you just even touch the power, you see it's just understeering away from the corner, and it's just all the way on the exit of the corner, and you're having to get out of the throttle then, which is really going to cost you time. So that was the major problem with this car, and it's going to be, you're going to see it in a few moments time just how bad it is. As we come through Ice Cream Cove now, coming down to this corner, we get the brake in, and it just nowhere near the apex. As soon as we get onto it looks like it's going to just go towards the apex. As soon as you get on the power, thinking you're there, it skates away from you, and it's very, very hard to kind of dial that out of your thinking and the way you drive it as well. I couldn't dial it out, and through here coming down towards James May corner, it was just really, really difficult. It didn't want to slow down for this one at times. And this is one of the probably the best run we've had through that corner, but other times we were running wide. And then coming down towards the back end of sector 1, you can just see it doesn't really stay to the apex. We get close to it, but it just skates away. So yeah, I mean, if you have any suggestions or tips on how to dial out this cataclysmic power on understeer, then let me know in the comments, guys, because I tried everything I could and I couldn't figure it out as we come through the danger curve. And again, down here onto outrun, it was a bit of a struggle. Again, we get very close to the barrier there, and through here you're just going to see I'm going to kind of saw at the wheel just to get it to settle down as we come now down the little dip and towards Fraggle Rock corner. And again, you just see there, it looks like it's okay. As soon as you get on the power, you get a big dose of understeer, which spits you out towards the outside of the course there. And again, into here, a little bit of a challenge to get it down to third. You have to brake a lot earlier than I was in the P1, I think, just to get it to turn in at bridge corner there. And then coming up towards the entrance of the Mungo McRae complex. And it wasn't too bad through here, to be honest with you. It took the bumps and the jumps in its stride. I think it handled it a little bit better than the P1, if I'm being honest. But it was just sometimes through a couple of the corners, the braking just isn't as good, in my opinion. It isn't as good as the P1, and I think that just comes down to the fact that the P1 just overall has more downforce. It definitely does at the front of it. Whether it does at the rear, I'm not sure. I mean, I think a more interesting fight between the P1 and the one of the FXX cars would be the FXX K Evo, because that actually has a full rear wing. This just has basically just a couple of winglets at the top of the rear bodywork, because obviously you've got the center wing, which will activate and lift when you're on the brake in there. So the FXX K Evo does actually have a full wing, so whether that will provide more downforce or whether they've adjusted the downforce at the front to produce more of it, I'm not sure. But that would have been a more interesting car to have in the game, I think. But as we come down towards the back end, as you see there, we got over the bumps and we almost got spat into the wall at that point. A little bit tricky. It didn't take these bumps all together too well. It was a little bit all over the shop, and I think maybe just tagged that barrier just a little bit. But coming down onto the Great Ocean Highway, again, it's a bit of a challenge through there sometimes. It wasn't as quick through here as the P1 was, but as we get the nose in, coming down now again towards the back end of the Great Ocean Highway. Again, it wasn't too bad through the second sector, but I can tell you it wasn't as good as the P1. It wasn't too far off, but it wasn't as good. And again, through here, these corners, having to come down a gear where I was just taking them a lot faster in the P1, if I'm being honest with you. And this one, again, this can really catch out cars with understeer. You see, just understeer just a little bit. We have to get out the throttle a little bit just to get it to settle down and to get the nose in. And coming down towards Deception, we get it basically all wrong, really. We're not getting anywhere near the apex of the corner. So sometimes it does, you know, for the most part, it's pretty good on the initial turning, but sometimes it just doesn't want to get in at all. So, like I said, I think it just needs someone who understands how to set up suspension a little bit better than me, and I'm trying to learn, but a lot of it can be quite complex and quite challenging, and there's only so much I can learn in a day, I suppose you can say. But coming through towards the back end of the course now, and onto Rocky Road, and yeah, again, this was the area where I was dreading it a little bit. This is the area which will catch out and punish cars with understeer more than any other area on this particular course. So I was having to tippy-toe a little bit through this one here. You can just see I'm having to get out the throttle again, because you just get that big skid at the front where it just skated across the track, and it will not turn in and it will not stick to the road. But as we come down towards the final corner, get it down to the third gear again, trying to get it settled before we get back on the power. And as we come across the line, it's going to be a time of 6 minutes 33.000, so a 6:33 dead. So honestly, I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting this to be a lot better, and the fact that this thing is nearly 12 seconds slower than the McLaren P1 GTR, it tells you everything you need to know, I think. And like I said, this car has just... The big problem with this car is just a lack of downforce, especially at the front of the car. I think that's where these two cars differ, because the P1 just seems to have a lot more downforce as a whole, and especially at the front of the package. So, yeah, not a great time, and it's going to be even more astonishing because if we look at the Hill Climb Monsters leaderboard, as you can see, it can only manage 7th, but even more astonishingly, it's slower by just over a second than the Ferrari F50 GT, which I really wasn't expecting. So there you have it, guys. It just goes to show you that you can have as much power as you want, but if you can't get that power and apply it to the track and make it work, then you're never going to come up with a fast time, especially on this course. So yeah, wow, I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting it to challenge the McLaren a bit, you know, put up a bit more of a stronger challenge, but I really was not even, I couldn't even fathom the idea of it being slower than the Ferrari F50 GT, which is nearly 20 years older than it. So yeah, whether that just tells you how good the Ferrari F50 GT is or how bad the Ferrari FXX K is, you be the judge, guys. But yeah, there we go, guys. Ferrari FXX K, only 7th on our Hill Climb Monsters leaderboard. So one of the bigger shocks we've seen from this particular series. But there we go, guys. So that's the end of today's episode. So thank you everybody so much for watching. If you did enjoy this, would like to see more Project Cars 2 or just general racing content from myself, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Also, if you have cars that you'd like to see me drive in this particular series, I've done numerous suggestions from you guys already, but if you have any more, you have a favourite car that I haven't driven yet in this series you'd like to see me drive, leave a comment down below. I'm always happy to hear from you. But yeah, once again, guys, thank you everybody so much for watching. Stay cool, and as always, I will catch you in the next video. Peace!